This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode of Real Estate Investing 365. Today I got with me Eric Drenckhahn. Hopefully I said that right. He is a Minnesota native, I guess, but he just moved his full-time residence down to Florida because it's much nicer in the summer and the taxes are more beneficial down there, I suppose. So he got started a long time ago in real estate. He is an expert at self-managing his property, and we're excited to dive into all that. So Eric, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So you're in Florida right now, huh? How's the weather?
Weather is like fantastic right now. Sunny day, and it's probably going to be a little over 80 degrees, maybe 82 degrees today. And it's February. No, I guess it's March, right? So certain places of the country like Minnesota might be a lot worse.
Right. Do you have air conditioning there in your house?
I do.
That's good. That makes a difference because I've only been to Florida a few times, and from being from California, it gets nice weather, it gets hot, but the humidity is much different. So we'll go out to Florida and that humidity just like gets me as soon as I get out of the shower. It's just a lot.
Yeah. Well, here you don't even have to take a shower. You just go out in the summertime, you drip all the sweat, and you're just like you come out of the shower. Just wipe off and
yeah, there you go. Right on. Well, that's seems like a much nicer place to spend your time in the winters than up in Minnesota. But that's where all your real estate properties are, correct?
Yes, that's where I get 24 renters up in Minnesota, and I also have a vacation rental down here in Florida.
Okay, well, why don't we dive into kind of your background, like where you were before real estate, and then how you got started in real estate to begin with, and then we'll dive into everything that you do.
Sure. So my background, I got an undergrad degree in computer science and math, and a graduate degree in MBA in marketing. But having said that, I've always had an IT job up until 2016 when I quit, and then more or less retired. But along the way, I got my first two properties somewhat by accident. I've always dabbled in real estate, either being in sales or interested in it. But my father had a stroke, and so he had a couple properties and big mortgages on them, and I had a choice. What do I do? Sell them to pay for the nursing home? Do I rent them out and then use that money? And as it turned out, the mortgages on them, he had just refinanced, so it wasn't like I was getting good deals at all. But I thought, you know what, I'll take it over and we'll try to rent it out and then we'll pay the nursing home. And so that's what we did, right? And I still have those two first properties. But then as I delved into it further, back in around 2005, 6, I thought, well, geez, this is working out pretty good. Why don't I get some more properties? And so I started looking at different properties that, and it was crazy hard to find properties to make any money, right? Everything was negative cash flowing in it. And I had a good job. And I thought, well, what if I just did where I fed the property a couple $100 a month, right? And I'm making okay money. And maybe that's the way people make money on real estate. Over time, your negative cash flow becomes positive and whatever happens. And I went to some other real estate seminars, and they said that, no, that's not the way you do it. You got a cash flow from day one, right? And that is true. You got a cash flow from day one, or don't buy the property.
Sure.
And I went to probably the most influential real estate seminar I went. And keep in mind, I went to a lot of different free webinars. I sent away for a lot of free stuff, like, try it for 30 days. If it doesn't work, send it back. So I would try it, look it over, and I really didn't see an application. I sent it back. But I went to got some information from Dave Lindahl from Multifamily Millions, right? And, I got to apologize to Dave because I got his information, read it, and actually returned it because I couldn't use it at the time. But a few ideas did stick with me in my head. And that is, he was looking for a 15% cash flow from day one, I think it was, right? It might have been 12, but somewhere it was like significant cash flow.
Right.
And I thought, well, maybe that's the way to do it. So I started looking at some different properties with a realtor. And, a realtor is going to be careful of it. I'm a realtor myself. But having said that, there was a property listed. This was in 2007. So just before the crash, although it was kind of already kind of there. And the property was listed for $385. And I told my realtor, I'm having a hard time coming up with a number with a 3 in front of it to make an offer on this thing. He goes, well, let's just offer 300 then. So I offered 300 and it sold for 380. Right. So you got to get used to not getting your offers.
Yeah.
Then later on, we made some other offers, and then it hit at a much more realistic number. So the heyday, right, was 2009, 10, 11, and 12 kind of area. But there's always going to be good properties out there. They're just harder to find, and maybe now you have more competition, right? But if you have cash, which is huge, that makes a big difference. So anyway, that's how I did. So in 2008, I bought a fourplex, and I had a job so I could afford a mortgage, because I had W-2 income. I had to put up about 80 or 100 grand somewhere in there because it was like 20% down on a $300,000 property. And then, hopefully, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Because I did see the message about the internet. So yeah, to the audience, we got not the greatest connection here, but it is what it is. So yeah, I had to put up about $80,000 and maybe put another 40,000 in. And so, you got to have some capital, and all these zero down scenarios that whether it's Credit Sheets or whoever else is telling you zero down are out there. Sure they are, but you're not going to find a pristine property with zero down and just walk into it and start making money. I've had a friend of mine who says, "Oh, if you can find me a thing I can make a quick 40 grand on, let me know." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? If I can find a job, a deal I can make a quick 40 grand on, I'm doing it. I'm not calling you. I'll call you when it's done."
Yeah, no, that's true.
Deals do fall into your lap periodically. Then the more people know you're into real estate, the more people will come to you either to be a hard money lender or to try to help figure out how to rehab a property, or to actually have you rehab it, or to actually have you buy it, right? The more people know that you're into it, the more chance you have at succeeding.
Yeah, for sure. So let's so back when you got these properties from your dad when he had his stroke, they weren't by any means like, "Oh, this is awesome, I got these 2 properties," right? They're kind of like you said, he had just refinanced them. They had a high mortgage on them. He probably was he managing them correctly, or was there issues were there?
There were 2 duplex. Actually, there was a duplex that he was living in one side and renting out the upper half. That there was no leases. I didn't know what the renter was supposed to pay or anything.
Yeah.
And then the other was just an office building that now was vacant because he couldn't continue his business, right? So there's no renters in there, and there was no kitchen in the residence because that would all taken out to use for office space. So there's nothing. So no revenue coming in, but yet big expenses, not only from the nursing home, but from the, mortgages and property taxes and everything else that goes along with it.
Sure.
So yeah, so I had to put a kitchen into it, and I do things right, but I don't always pull a permit. That's so
right.
You can do a lot of rehabbers don't do that, but as long as you do it right, that's the main thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've not pulled many permits, but as long as you're doing it right, not janky work, then whatever. Your own house. Sometimes the county can take. Like in our county in Northern California, man, this place takes, it could take you 3 or 6 months to get the permit all going, and, all the wheels turn in the right direction because they're just, I don't know what's wrong. They're just slow at everything. So sometimes that'll just ruin your cash flow from day one very quickly.
Right. And then, I just replumbed the house, put PEX in instead of a combination of galvanized and PVC that was too small for the what it should have been 1/2-inch pipe instead of 3/4-inch pipe. And it had some copper. It was like all a bunch of mess, right? No shutoffs anywhere. So I just replumbed it in PEX, put shutoffs freaking everywhere. And so it makes it a lot better from a future maintenance standpoint, but also from a water flow. You can turn it on and actually get water out of the faucet upstairs.
Right,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, because galvanized pipe, is small, and then it gets corroded on the inside, and it stops your water flow.
There's some you see some of those pictures of those galvanized pipes. They just look disgusting on the inside. You cut them open, and it's just like barely any water gets through. And yeah, you're like, man, I'm drinking out of that. It just seems so gross.
Right.
But
and if I had a permit for that, it would have been crazy expensive. But anyway, that's a whole nother deal.
Yeah.
So then in 2000, go ahead.
Oh, okay. If you can real quick, go ahead and pause your video if you can, because it keeps going back and forth, and it's kind of making the audio a little goopy. But I think that might help out a little bit. If you can just go to there you go. Let's see.
There, that should have stopped it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I think that we'll be good to go. So that was in 2002, you said?
No, so I bought my first fourplex in 2018.
Okay.
No, not 2018. What the hell year? It's 10 years ago.
2008.
So 2008. I'm sorry, 2008. Holy
But
crap.
okay, so you got these two properties from your father in
Okay.
2000.
That was like 2000, right around 2000.
Okay, so most people when they inherit properties, that's part of the people that sometimes we're buying from. Like with me and my partner, is people that inherit properties and they don't want to deal with it. What was your thought process behind? Well, let's just try to turn these around as opposed to just trying to sell them and forget about it and move on.
Well, if I would have sold them, there really wasn't a lot of money, right? And then you got to figure, okay, if you're going to sell them, do you have to fix them up? And I don't want to do a lot of fix up on these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, let's just, if I'm going to fix it up, then I'm going to just try to rent it out, maybe see what happens. And I really wasn't sure. I had went in, a long time prior to that, I went in with with my dad on another real estate deal. And, I put up some money and we had a fourplex. And then he couldn't really figure out how to make it work. So he let it go back to the bank and actually lost the money on it. But having said that, then I thought, well, let's try to make it work, because when a person has a stroke, you don't know if they're going to come back home or not, really.
Right.
In my case, he spent his next 5 years in a nursing home. But having said that, I thought, well, if he comes back, he's going to want to come back and live at home. So I thought, well, let's fix it up, get it rented out. And I didn't know anything about being a landlord at that point. But I thought, you know what, it can't be that hard. And as the more I learned, I was probably a lot more lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so the renter upstairs came down shortly after I started working on it with the rent, which is good, because most of the time he was actually late and he wasn't really paying market rate. So, but anyway, he came down and paid. Meanwhile, I still had mortgage payments to do and taxes to get paid in a few months. And the other building, the first front half was office building and the back half was a residence. And I want to say the first people I rented it to, we were fixing it up and they came by and said, yeah, we want to rent. And there was 4 people there. So I said, hey, no problem. And they were roofers, right? They came up to do storm damage or something.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 people came in, we want to rent it. I said, well, it won't be ready for about another week. So they came back the next week. I was still working on it. It wasn't quite done. And they goes, but now there's 6 people. And they said, oh, we're going to help you we're going to help you work, right? So they grabbed paintbrushes and did whatever it was and said, yeah, this is fine. We'll move in. And it really wasn't that great of a place at that point, but they're ready to move in. They're paying cash. And so it went from 4 to 6. And I swear before it was all over, there was 20 people in this 3-bedroom house. There were mattresses, 3 or 4 on each floor of each bedroom. In the basement, which is, it's got a cement floor, but it's a totally unfinished basement. But at least it's got a cement floor, rough cement, but it's got a cement floor. There was mattresses all down there. People were living. One of the guys told me, yeah, him and his girlfriend were laying on the mattress, and a big rat came across them. And,
oh no!
I didn't necessarily know of any rats there, but who knows? They had every week. I had a 2-yard dumpster there that for the tenants, and every week the thing was packed full of beer bottles. But anyway, so they were good until all of a sudden they weren't. But doing it again, I would never rent to, people without a background check and that many people.
Right. Were they traveling construction workers or?
Right. And, probably illegal aliens working on roofs.
Okay.
And so, there was they need a place to live too, right? And I didn't know anything. They were offering to pay money and they wanted to move in right away, right? And that's typically your high risk renter, the one that wants to move in right away.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of landlords like it because, geez, they want to move in right away. My lucky day.
Right.
But it's not your lucky day. It's your unlucky day because that's not the one you want.
Probably just prolonging or extending the pain a little bit on that property. So what was the key factors to you turning that around? It was just that you strapped on your work pants and you went out there and said, okay, well, I need to fix these properties up. And you didn't really know anything, I assume, about real estate at the time because you hadn't really done a lot before, but it's kind of simple really when you think about it. You just have to have a property that you got to fix up and make in livable condition and hopefully a little bit nicer, and then get people to come rent it and make that rent cover your mortgage, right? It's kind of,
in a nutshell, you're right. And, I could probably write a book and have a cookie cutter approach that anybody that follows my rules could make it.
mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of landlords that want to do the shortcuts, right? And there's no easy way to do it. I mean, yeah, you can hire it out, but it's going to cost you money. You can take in the tenants that want to move in right away, but that's a high risk proposition. You can take in low credit score tenants, and that's another high risk proposition. But yeah, my first property. Now I did paint a little bit, but what really got me started even on more of the remodeling is that I had a guy that I was going to work with to paint, and he was a handyman. He wasn't even working that much, but he said, I'm going to take Memorial Day weekend off. I'm not going to paint. I'm not going to work. Maybe next week I'll get back to it. I'm thinking, I got a vacant building. I need to have this thing painted so I can get renters in. And 3 days on Memorial Day weekend, because I'm working full time at that point.
Yeah.
I can get started painting, and I'm just going to do it. And I did have a friend of mine that was also a painter, different friend that was a professional painter. And I had him work with me a little while, and I learned a lot of tips from him just by watching him and working with him. So that was a huge benefit to me. And on my blog, I do have a thing about painting, but if you're painting out of a 5-gallon pail versus a roller pan, if you're using blue masking tape, which sucks, versus just regular masking tape, because you're going to pull it off in about 2 hours anyway. Using sheepskin rollers, there's a lot of different ways to make life more efficient when you're painting, and it's not as sloppy as, some people come out of it when they get done painting, they're sloppy.
Yeah.
But it really isn't that sloppy if you're halfway decent. I mean, you don't even have to be a good painter. You just have to use decent equipment. That's the biggest thing.
I think, yeah, that is the biggest thing. Cause me for one, I'm definitely not a good painter. That's for sure, man. I get out there and it just drives me crazy. It's like the patience wise. I think my mind just wants to go too fast. I was like, go, go, go. And you got to slow down a little bit. I assume That's probably helps you a lot.
Well, and a decent brush to cut in. Like I hired a guy once, and I've been through the Craigslist people, and he was charging me $20 an hour to paint. And so that's fine. So he would take about 40 hours to paint an apartment, and I can paint an apartment in 16 hours.
Right.
So, I mean, was he really making $20 an hour? No, he was really making $40 an hour because it's taking him twice as long. So oftentimes the cheapest guy isn't always the best either.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, and those are definitely lots of good information there. So then it took you kind of 8 years to get to your next property. So why did it take you so long to make a move on another property? I'm sure you're just busy in life and all that sort of thing, but was there any reason why you waited that long?
No, it just was one of those things that, it was working good for a while. And then around, like I said, 2005, 6, I started looking for property and then went to those seminars and then, finally found one to hit. And, there's a lot of people want to invest across the country or whatever in some town an hour away, but the best investment property you can find, the best rental property is the one you can walk to. So these are about 4 miles from my house, and Home Depot right in between them. So there were some fourplexes in this neighborhood. I thought, let's look at them. That was that one that I made the offer for 380. I'm sorry, I made the offer for 300 that eventually sold for 380. Mm-hmm. Then they started getting a little more better thing, and so I bought one. I actually missed out on a property by just a couple $1,000. I think it was listed for 318 and I offered 310 or something and sold for 312. And on that one, the listing agent, and by the way, I made a lot of offers in between time too.
Right.
The listing agent wasn't sure about my financing because I don't know, he just didn't understand it or something. It was just a regular Freddie or Fannie mortgage. I can't remember the commercial mortgage, but and then I thought, what? Why don't I just go through the listing agent to get these properties, and then it'll be a harder listing for them, and then they'll even have more incentive to get my offer.
Okay, so yeah, explain that a little bit. So you find the properties online, I guess, at the time, and you find out who the listing agent is, and you just contact them directly instead of working specifically with the buyer's agent.
Exactly, because they have a lot of incentive at that point, right? Because they're getting a double commission.
Right.
And having said that, if you're going to go through a real estate agent, you get a referral fee, man. You're referring yourself. So there's no reason why a real estate agent can't give you a referral fee. If he won't, then go to somebody else.
Oh, you're saying because you have your real estate license?
Even if you don't.
Oh, okay.
They can give you're part of the transaction. You can get a little kickback from the realtor.
Right.
And I don't know, they call it a referral fee or whatever. As long as you're part of the transaction or a licensed real estate agent, they can give you something.
Yeah.
And I've done that forever, even before I was an agent.
Okay. I wonder if that's the same laws in all areas, or if that's something I've never really heard of that out here, but I would assume that, or maybe they would give you a discount, because I think out here, I feel like they would have to just give you a discounted price or something, or maybe a credit at closing or something like that. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
they
how
give you
that.
a credit at closing.
Okay.
And so my last property I bought was 175, and it was right at about $1,000 I got back.
Okay.
So what you get is like 25% of the buyer side of the commission,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you get just about 1% is about what it amounts to, maybe a little less than 1%.
Yeah.
Because
No, and that's a good point for going directly to the selling agent and working with them. I know a lot of people in commercial properties, like bigger apartment buildings, they kind of talk about that a lot. Um, I guess the only issue that I would run into with that would be, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, is, I guess their fiduciary duty would first be to the um, the seller, right? So they might
right.
not always have like your best interest in mind, because their first responsibility is a seller.
That might be true, but they still want that commission, right? And their first responsibility to seller is to get that thing sold. So the seller has to make a determination if he wants that money or not, right? Whatever you're offering.
Uh-huh.
And the agent can convince him maybe it's a good offer or whatever. Or if it's real close, he's got a lot more commission there to kind of make it skinnier, right? So you can say, well, instead of a 5% commission, we'll make it 4%, and then this thing will work.
Right.
And so, whereas if you got two different brokerage firms, especially two different agents that have two different brokers, well, there's a lot of hands in the puzzle.
Yeah, a lot. People don't realize, like, people that may not be an agent, and they think, why is agents getting so much money? Agents don't really get that much money when you break it between the broker and then all your transaction coordinator and all the other stuff, the pictures and different things that agents have to pay for. You end up getting only like, maybe like 1 to 1.5% of the transaction as a buying or a selling agent per side. You know what I mean? So it
Right.
really doesn't end up being that much money.
And if it's early in the year, even less sometimes, right? Because a lot of times you got to pay the brokerage firm, and the first $18,000 you get a smaller commission or whatever the number is, and then it goes up maybe, right? So
Yeah.
So
Okay, cool. So you had mentioned a second ago, you said, well, you mentioned a couple of things. One, that you like to buy locally instead of like buying out of state. And then two, it sounds like you're pretty patient, like looking at properties, making offers, like waiting in time to get the right deal. And I think part of that problem, what people have these days, which I'm included in this, is that, back before the crash, there wasn't as much of this bigger pockets, and there wasn't the podcast going on, and you didn't get to hear from as many like people that make these home run careers in a short amount of time and buy hundreds of properties and all this stuff. Whereas now I feel like there's not a lot of people that have gone out there and, bought dozens and dozens of properties every year, and 5 years later they have 150 units or whatever. There's not a lot of those people, but you hear about the people that have done that all the time, because they're on podcasts and they're on social media, and you see them all the time. So you almost get this kind of like feeling like you're losing, or you're lacking, you're falling behind, you're not doing it correctly, like this sense of like you're messing up, right? But really what you're saying is, it's better just take your time, like the deals will come, make the offers, make sure your numbers work, don't get caught up in the whole trying to go too fast motion. Is that what you kind of say?
exactly, and it's okay to make offers, right? You can make 100 offers, but don't make them too high, right? So while you're looking for properties, maybe you see something, right? And I used to go with the LoopNet, and whatever you think about LoopNet doesn't matter, but there's a lot of properties out there, commercial properties, especially if you're looking at multifamilies, and you can run the numbers, right? You can request the pro forma or whatever, they'll send you the thing with the numbers on them. And you always have to be skeptical of their maintenance and repair, because I always use 10% for maintenance or repair regardless, or I use actual, whichever is higher. But you can analyze property for free, right? So I used to analyze $1 million properties, right? Multi-million-dollar properties. Does this thing make sense? Not that I was going to buy them ever, because I could never buy them. They were way too much money, but I wanted to get the experience of, based upon the price they're asking, what kind of return would I get?
Right.
And can I put it in a spreadsheet, and can I make it happen? Can I analyze the numbers fairly quickly? And I must have analyzed, I know, over hundreds of properties before I bought the first one. Then even the one I bought, I was analyzing it every which way. Like, what am I missing? Why is this thing, how is it going to, it's a risk mitigation, right? How is it going to stab me in the back after I buy it? And, once again, don't expect the property that you buy is going to be pristine, right? Because the property I bought, I went into the property in Minnesota, and I can't remember what month it was, but it was cold because it was below zero outside, and the building had no heat. So we went into the building, and not only was it 20 below outside, it was 20 below inside. And I could see copper pipes split with frozen icicles coming out of the water pipe.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I don't know what's in the walls now, right? But I know that here, and there's a copper pipe in the open, it's froze solid, and and I can see the split in the pipe, and there's water dripping. So then you got to take a risk, man. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Right.
And it's not, right? I read somewhere where like 3% of the population has real estate investments or something like that. Probably not talking about REITs, but probably talking about actually owning something where you're renting it out or whatever.
Yeah.
So you got to take some risk.
Yeah. And again, today, everybody, you hear all the podcasts and you hear all this social media if you're on that stuff, and it seems like everybody has it. But I think really still, most people don't. It just happens that if you engulf yourself in that world of real estate investing, that's all you're thinking about, and that's all the people you're around, you feel like everybody's doing it, and you have that fear of missing out or whatever.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the case.
Think about this. Like, let's say you wanted 100 properties, and let's say tomorrow somebody gave you 100 properties. What the hell would you do?
Yeah.
Right. You probably would lose them all anyway. Maybe you'd salvage a few at the end, but most people aren't even ready for 100 properties, let alone, get them, it should be used to one property. And even when I was buying property, I would buy one fourplex every year. And it just coincidentally, they were all kind of in the same neighborhood, and they kept getting cheaper and cheaper. But buy a property, get it fixed up, get it rented, understand the process, and then buy the next one, right? That was my strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
If you get too many, if you got 4 units that are vacant, that's money every month out of not necessarily out of your pocket, but if you're not collecting money, it's kind of out of your pocket, because any dollar you don't take in is a dollar that you basically spent.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. You still got to pay the mortgage and insurance, taxes, all that stuff, and you're putting money into it to repair it and fix it up.
Yep.
So
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, a lot of people think, oh, my time is too valuable, I can't be out there fixing stuff. Well, you know what? Let's look at your life there. Let's look how many hours you spent on the couch just watching TV. Let's look at this and that, and see how many hours you could have maybe transpired into the $50 an hour savings that you would have to hire somebody.
Yeah.
And maybe the guy that's working for $50 an hour if you hire a professional painter, he's going to get at least $50 an hour. A painting firm. If you hire a painter themselves, maybe they get a little bit less. But having said that, you might be able to only paint half as fast, but it's still $25 an hour that you're making instead of watching TV or whatever. Because I see that all the time where, oh, I'm too busy, I can't, I got to spend my money on other things or spend my time on other things. And it's like, well, maybe, but odds are you get a lot of hours in your day that you don't do a damn thing.
Yeah.
So get out there and do something.
Yeah, and definitely I'm guilty of saying both ways, saying what you're saying and saying the other way too. So but I think every situation you have to look at on its own. Like, I've done a lot of rehabs on my own properties myself and done all the work on the weekends and things. But at those particular times, let's say I'd go over there on the weekend, I might not have had overtime at my work available to me to work. So I would take the spare time and go work and do productive things. But there's plenty of other occasions where, hey, overtime's unlimited right now. There's so much work. You guys go work 7 days a week for the next 3 or 4 months. I'm like, okay, well, all weekend I'm working anyways, and I'm making overtime, which is far more than I'm paying these guys to come over here and do my yard work or do my painting around the house. So you just got to weigh it, and don't just get in that mindset maybe of saying, oh, I need to do higher dollar productive work, because that's true. But most people, like you said, don't do that, right? Because they're on the weekend and they want to go drink beer with their buddies, or they're going to come home and watch the football game or whatever, which is fine. But don't keep telling yourself, I'm not going to do the work because, oh, it's only $20 and $20 an hour work. If you're not willing to go put in the work to, people don't want to do the work is what we're getting at here.
And I guarantee you that everybody's got 10 hours a week. right? Because and it's always a lot of times it's the people without any money, right? So if everybody has 10 hours a week and they can do something productive on their rental property from the rehab,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's $200 a week. That's $10,000 a year that they save, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people own property, they don't even make $10,000 on the property.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, and
Right?
everybody's financial situation is different. If you're making 500 grand a year and you're want to go enjoy time with your family, you got extra dispensable cash to go out there and just pay people to do it. That's perfectly fine too.
Right.
It's everybody's
Yep.
position.
That's exactly it. It depends upon where you're starting from too, right? But you're right. Like yourself, if you get overtime and there's an actual thing you can do that you can quantify that number, then do it. But like I say, most people get,
Don't
hanging out
take
with
that
their
action.
friends. Right. So,
Okay, cool. So you bought that fourplex in 2008. And then did you continue to be able to buy maybe one a year, one every other year up until what point did you stop?
so I bought one in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I have 5 fourplexes at this point.
Uh-huh.
And then in 2013 or 14, it was, I bought I did a flip with a friend of mine. It was a creative buy, and we actually made pretty good money on it for buying a place and 3 weeks later putting it on the market and then getting a cash deal about a month after that. So it was actually a pretty sweet gig. And then I bought another property in 2016 that just fell into my lap. It was crazy good, as a matter of fact. But once again, if people know you're into real estate, deals seem to come your way, or maybe you a little bit more just because of what you are, whatever. But so in this case, and I'll just give you a quick little deal here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my tenants called me up looking. They said, "Are you still looking to buy real estate?" And of course, I'm looking to buy real estate, right? But I'm not looking for like expensive property. I'm looking for deals. And when I say deal, it could be $1 million property that's a deal,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not looking for $1 million property that's only worth 500. So they called and they said, "Oh, our parents are looking to sell their house, and they can't find somebody to buy it, and so they're wondering if you'd be interested." And I thought, yeah, I know the way that works, right? They're trying to sell it for more than it's worth, and nobody wants it. And so, but they said, I told them I'll call. So I called them, and they said, "Well, look, we bought this property 3 years ago for $60,000. It was in St. Paul, kind of right across the street from the opportunity zones, by the way. So I was on the wrong side of the street. But having said that, wasn't the greatest neighborhood. But so we bought this house for $60,000 3 years ago. Trulia says it's worth about 95 for whatever Trulia is worth, and even the Zillow numbers, whatever. They're probably not that accurate, but at least they're in the ballpark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it perked my ears up, right? They bought it for 60, and they said it's worth 95, and they said we only want 45,000 for it. And I thought, well, at 3 years, property's gone up in value. I know that.
Yeah.
And Trulia says it's worth a little bit more. So I talked with them. We made a deal to buy it for 45,000. Well, and the only stipulation was that they wanted to live in it free for about 6 months after the close, or be able to rent it back. And I thought, geez, I'm a landlord. Why wouldn't I? I'll rent it back here forever. So
Yeah.
we filled out the paperwork. I submitted it to the title company, and they had a contract for deed. They could not make the balloon payment. So the balloon payment was coming due, and it was only a $38,000 balloon payment, and they couldn't get it refinanced because their credit was crap and everything else, right? So I submitted to the title company. At the same point, I contacted the contract for deed holder, and he had made a recommendation. Why don't I just assign the contract for deed to you? He said that would be probably the easiest, but I always wanted to do the close the right way, right? So I went to the title company, and they said, "Oh, wait, as part of this closing, there's also a $25,000 IRS lien on the property. Who's going to pay that?" And I thought, oh, the deal is off, right? I can't pay 45 plus the 25 and have this piece of property. So I went back to the contract deed owner. I did the assignment thing that he talked about. It made sense because I knew what they were. So I bought it from him for $38,000. And then I talked to the owner, said, "Well, geez, I had to do it this other way. So now we're going to cancel the contract for deed so you can still live there for free." And we cancel the contract for deed, then the IRS lien actually goes away in a contract for deed cancellation. It's like a foreclosure. And so I picked up this property for $38,000 instead of $45,000. which is even better. And they ran it back to me for about 18 months, I think 16 months total. Then they couldn't afford it anymore. They moved out. I threw another 30 or 40 into the property and sold this property that I just bought for 38 for 175.
Oh,
So it was a good
sweet.
deal.
Yeah, it's like $100,000 spread there after
There
what you put
was,
into it.
and then I went down to Florida and did a 1031 exchange with the money. So so now I got my vacation rental as a part of that deal.
Okay, so can you explain a little bit more what the contract for deed is and all that? Because if you're not familiar, it's kind of hard to understand. What exactly is that?
Sure, that's where it's kind of like unconventional financing, right? So if I bought a property from you, and maybe I could get a mortgage and maybe not, maybe your property is not quite what they want to loan money for, maybe it's commercial property or whatever, right? The banks have certain kind of boxes that they loan money for, right? They don't like weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I would contract for you. I usually put about 10 or 20% down, and then I make you payments to you. And typically you make them for 3, 5, 10 years. And then at the end of that period of time, I make a balloon payment of the remainder of the money to you. And hopefully by that point, the property is worth more. So maybe I can get a mortgage, or maybe my job has changed so I can get a mortgage, or maybe I just have the cash so I get the mortgage, or maybe we did the contract for deed so the payments just amortized out to zero after 10 years. But it's basically where the seller becomes the bank.
Okay,
And
so
some sellers like it and some sellers don't.
So these particular people that you were buying the property from, at the time when they bought the house for 60,000, they couldn't get a conventional, or they didn't want to get a conventional loan for whatever reason. So they ended up going out, and was it the original owner that did owner financing, or was it another like third party hard
No,
money type of guy?
it was the actual seller of the property
Okay,
that I bought the contract for deed from.
so they
And
seller. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, keep in mind, anytime you do something a little more creative, it's usually generally a little more risky. So you got to make sure that everything's in line. And I'll tell you what happened with this one. It
Mm-hmm.
turned out okay, but it was definitely a little bit more risky. Because I bought the contract for deed and went to the attorney's office. The attorney assigned me the contract for deed, and I paid him the 35,000 or whatever, 38,000, and everything was fine. But when I went to sell it, we had some title issues. So a way to avoid that is we could have done it right to begin with. They assigned me it was the wrong form is what it was, right? So there's two different kinds of contract for deed assignment. One is where they just assigned the revenue stream, and one is where they assigned the revenue stream and the property. So they gave me just the revenue stream one. And then all of a sudden I had this, the day of closing, a property that's all fixed up, ready to go, and I don't even own the damn thing. But so a little risky, right? I could have bought title insurance for it, and that probably would have, maybe made sense. But having said that, I contacted the owner, the previous seller, and he met me. He drove out of his way to give me a quit claim deed for the property that resolved all the issues, and we got it done. But the title company calls it like the day before closing with all these issues. They don't call you like 2 weeks before. They can't look at it, and just get the basics out of the way. They got to wait till like the day before closing, and then look at it, and then it's an emergency.
Right. No, that's always frustrating when they're
right
when they do that. But on the other hand, they got a lot of stuff going on, I'm sure. But geez, they should have somebody like reviewing them to make sure the steps are in place first.
Right. Just weed out the major hurdles, right? Like, okay, is this right or is this not? And maybe don't go through every little bits and pieces of it, but yeah, just give a quick precursory to weed out 80% of the issues that are on real estate transactions. Like, do you really own the property?
Yeah, for sure. So a contract for deed, what you're talking about, just so people know, is that the people originally bought the house as seller financing from the original or the first owners. And then they ended up, after the time comes due and they have their balloon payment after 5 years or whatever, they couldn't pay that. So they also didn't pay their taxes during that time. So you couldn't do a conventional purchase, I guess you would say, like cash purchase through a title company, because then you'd have to pay the back taxes. So you went to the landowners, the original owners that did the seller financing, and you ended up just buying the contract from them as like it was a foreclosure, which wipes out the tax lien. And so you end up getting the property for $38,000.
Exactly.
Okay. No, that's
Exactly.
perfect. That makes perfect sense. So that's awesome. Yeah. And so it makes a good point that, the more you network and the more you do this and the more people you talk to, just tell people, you're in real estate investing and all these things, and deals come across, and you never know what people really want out of a property. It's like always surprising to me. We just put a property under contract actually yesterday or today. I think they signed the contract this morning. And, the property's worth like 160, but we put it under contract for 118.5. And the people just, they had it as a rental for a certain amount of years, and, they're older, they're retiring, and they don't owe hardly any money on it. And they just want to get rid of it at an easy price. So we just walked in and said, okay, well, we'll give you this price. And it ended up working out, but you'd never know. Not everybody wants to maximize their dollar and get every ounce out of it, because the stress of doing that sometimes is not worth the cost of extra money that they're going to get out of the property to some people, So just like this, you never know what situation people are in, and people might just take it. And the more they know you're in real estate, hey, deals just end up coming to you, right?
Right. And sometimes it's a little more complex, right? So the average realtor doesn't understand how to put it together, right? The average realtor, and when I say the average one, like 99% of them, first of all, most of them don't know how to do a short sale even today, right? But back in the short sale heyday, none of them knew how to do a short sale.
Right.
But I did know a realtor that did it anyway, and I did several short sales. But and the average realtor, knows the MLS. You go out, you list the property, you put it on the MLS, and the other agent looks on the MLS and buys it. So if you're going to go through a realtor to find property, that's all they're going to do, right? If you really want to find the deals, you got to find them yourself. Like another one of my fourplexes I bought, and the reason how I got that is I bought the mortgage from the bank, right? And so.
Okay.
And you can't get a mortgage to buy a mortgage, right? And I had to continue the foreclosure, but the bank was happy because they got their money and they're out of it. And they certainly don't want any extra money. All they want is what's owed on the property. And, I let them go through the initial sheriff's sale and stuff. And then I contacted them and picked it up they assigned me the mortgage. The mortgage continued the foreclosure. And then I got the property. It was vacant. When they first started the foreclosure, there's people in it, but they hired a property manager and got everybody out. And then I was interested because I don't want a property that I don't exactly own. And I own the mortgage, but I don't own the property, and I got people living in there, and that's going to be a problem. So you got to understand what your risk is going into a property, understand what you're paying for it, and understand kind of the general plan of attack that you're going to have to get this property going. But
Right.
buying a mortgage from the bank is a little more creative,
Oh yeah. So what are some of those ways that you find properties because they're not always on market properties that you're buying or that you've bought over the time. So what are some ways people can go out there and try to like look at different avenues of buying them besides just the MLS?
A good question. I know people that, you can be the ambulance chaser, right? Look in the obituaries, look in divorces and that kind of thing, and contact those folks. Foreclosures is probably the best way, right? And I used to subscribe to like Realty Track and used to send letters out. I used to send like 100 letters a week and meet with people in foreclosure. And sometimes you could help them out, sometimes not. I really didn't get any deals off it, but it helped me understand the foreclosure process just that much more, right? So I'd meet with like 3 people a week, talk to them about foreclosures, what they're going to be going through. Because people were back in those days, they didn't know, and the banks aren't telling them anything. They call the bank and they got to be on the phone for an hour. So I would go explain the foreclosure process. I had a nice little not spreadsheet, but a PowerPoint presentation. I kind of went through it with the ulterior motive of buying a property. But people should understand the foreclosure process, right? These bandit signs that you see all over, we buy properties with the number. I've heard that works okay, but it's a lot of work and time commitment too. You got to put them all out, and then sometimes the city will come by and pick them up and give you a call and tell you don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I bought them at sheriff sales. That's probably one of the easiest. If you just come off the street to buy a sheriff sale property, you just got to be the highest bidder. In Minnesota, there's generally no bidders at the sheriff sale, but your money's tied up for 6 months. You can put a lien on a property, like a mechanic's lien on a property.
Mm-hmm.
Then you redeem as a third lien holder or fourth lien holder or a second lien holder because you have a mechanic's lien. But there again, too, you have to know the owner because he has to give you the mechanic's lien. And you might have to pay them to do it. And then you also have to make sure they don't pay somebody else to do it for you, as well. And so that they're taking money from several investors so you got to make sure it's locked up 100% by getting the deed. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I probably know 1% of the ways, right? Because there's a ton of super savvy investors that are out there that are really doing it, but they can't do everyone, and they don't know all of them that are going on.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah, there's so many different ways out there doing it, but the point of it is just like, think outside the box. Don't just go right to your realtor and only look at on-market deals. Think if all you can do is just start mailing people, 100 properties a week or whatever your budget affords. I had a really good interview with Henry Washington that was recently on Bigger Pockets, and that's what he's done. In a couple of years, he's got like 60 properties, and it's just all started just from his main budget of $1,000. I think is like $1,500 for 6 months of marketing. He's like, well, that's all I can afford. So I'm just going to start mailing them out, and slowly, one or two come in here and there. And he just starts buying up properties that way. So there's tons of different ways out there to find the properties. It just takes like the action. You got to start doing it. You got to make something happen. So,
yeah. And even one of mine now, this was a fourplex, and the owner was in a short sale situation. And they had a realtor that helped them. So one of the tenants in the thing, he's an airline pilot even, right? But he wasn't making any money. Made an offer of the property for $390,000. And he had already been through 2 different lenders that declined him. Not even been 3 different lenders for $390,000. So I approached the owner. I said, look, you seem to be having a hard time selling this thing. I can do it with a short sale. I got a realtor that's going to help me, and we're going to get it done. But we're not going to do it for $390,000. We're going to offer $269,000. Wow. Okay, because we knew the other ones in the area sold for $269,000, so because I bought them.
Yeah.
And so the owner agreed, because in a situation like that, the owner doesn't, in a short sale, the owner doesn't make any money anyway, right? Because that's kind of by definition. But we did tell him that, at the end of the closing, I'll buy all the appliances from you for $4,000, and I'll give you cash at closing, right? Because that's legal. You can sell all the appliances. They're not part of the property. They're loose. Mm-hmm. But that does give them a little incentive to work with you. Whereas otherwise maybe the other person doesn't give them any money for the appliances, so at least the owner can walk away with some money.
Yeah. Just thinking outside the box, try to do some different things, right?
Right. And so, because like say that, the owner can't profit from a foreclosure, but they can profit from selling the fixtures or the appliances, anything that's not attached, they can sell, right? Refrigerator, that's on wheels. The stove, that just slides in. It's not attached. Right, and whatever else they have, and I can pay what I want for those things, right? So so that's what we did, and
okay.
We got it done for $269,000.
Right on, yeah, that's good. So the main reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is you still currently self-manage all your properties, right? You have 24 units plus a vacation rental, and you do all the self-managing yourself, correct?
That is correct. Now the vacation rental is kind of done. I don't really do a whole lot with that.
Okay.
I do a little bit with it. The vacation rental, just to kind of give you a heads up, I got a online marketing company called Evolve Vacation Rental, and they put out the ads on HomeAway and Airbnb and all the other ones. And I got a guy on the ground that kind of responds to any requests.
Right.
As I get a reservation, I send the people an email, after they paid anyway. So once they're committed, of a lot of information, Wi-Fi password, the gate codes, and welcome to the property, and blah, 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 some tidbits. And then after they leave, I send them an email saying, thanks for staying. So be sure to give me a 5-star review. That's about the only thing I do, is send those 2 emails and just understand, and the bookkeeping too, right? But my other properties, yeah, I'm the one that self-manages. I'm the one that cleans them myself. And I got a friend that helps clean them too. I'm the one that finds the tenants. I'm the one that signs the leases. I'm the ones that coordinates any work. If I'm up there in Minnesota, then I do the work myself 90% of the time. And in the wintertime, I have one of my tenants that's pretty good at doing stuff. So I have him do it, and he gets a little rent credit on that.
Okay, so let's talk about what are the key factors that have made you successful at self-managing all your own properties that most people maybe they don't do correctly, or they ends up costing them more money in the long run. let's walk through the process of, let's say you first buy a property and it's a vacant property and you're going to fill it up or fix it up or whatever. What are like the steps from start to finish that you end up doing that makes it profitable and work out for you?
One of the best things I can tell people is tenant quality is, and I used to be a Section 8 landlord, right? I rented to murderers and everything else. One of my previous tenants, the move-in felon boyfriend, I don't think he was a felon at that point, but he went on to be a murderer, and then I got other ones that. So once again, I've had the worst of the worst, right?
Wow, yeah.
As a Section 8 landlord. Having said that, when I had the 2 duplexes and I was a Section 8 landlord, I was wondering how anybody could ever manage more than 2 duplexes at any given time, because there's just too much work, man. There's drama, there's calls, there's always something that goes on with a Section 8 property. And it doesn't really, get back, Section 8 is just a program, right? So it's really not the program, right? It's not the program that causes a couch to be left beside your dumpster. It's the quality of the people on the program, right? It doesn't mean that all the people on the program are bad. It just means that a lot of them are. So you're going to have the problem, right? The fact that you get a bunch of mattresses left in your basement is not the Section 8 program's fault. It's the people on the Section 8 that left them there.
Right.
So tenant quality is the biggest thing, right? So I got out of the Section 8 business. It just wasn't worth it. There's just too much drama, right? I just don't have time to deal with other people's crap. So tenant quality is the biggest thing. And I did a lot of work on what makes a good tenant, right? I mean, who knows what makes a good tenant? But I did a lot of work on a mortgage foreclosure. I'm guessing that most people would default on their rent before they would default on their mortgage, right? That was my unscientific assumption.
Right.
So I figured out what was the odds of somebody defaulting on their mortgage based upon credit score, right? Credit score distribution and foreclosures. And you can Google some stuff out there. And I don't know exactly where it was anymore, but I Googled something. And if it's on the internet, of course, it's true. So I Googled something, found some statistics, and thought that, okay, at like a 620 credit score, there's 10% default or whatever it was. So I thought, okay, well, everybody's got to be this amount of credit score. And I even did some statistical analysis on how do you make money if you assume that they're going to have a 20% foreclosure rate. That means that if you have 100 tenants, 20% of them are going to foreclose, and it's going to be, say, at 6 months, because on a 1-year lease it's going to be random and it'll be at 6 months, and can you still make money? But I did a lot of work on that, and so now I've settled in that I have a 625 minimum credit score for all occupants of the building, and about 20% of the people will be at a 20%, below 625.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that if a husband and wife have an 18-year-old kid, he's got to be a 625 as well. So I don't really want to deal with it. And there's plenty of people out there. You can always increase demand by lowering price. And I'd be honest, I just don't have that many issues. I mean, once in a while I have an appliance break, but that's not the tenant's fault, generally not. Once in a while I have a issue, but nothing. It's generally an issue with the building per se, not the tenant, right? Because I don't want tenant issues. I don't want police coming because there's domestic. I don't want police, a bunch of junk stacked up outside the dumpster that the garbage guy won't pick up. I don't need, doors taken off their hinges and then failing a Section 8 inspection because the freaking door isn't on the hinge anymore. I don't need that kind of headaches.
Right.
I just want the standard person to come in there. And when they leave, I want to be able to do a 1-day turn. So if they leave at the end of the month, I want to be moving people in the next day, right? And good quality tenants, you can do that. I can show an apartment. Not every I have are the people decent as far as, housekeeping. But for the most part, they are.
Right. So you have a 625 minimum credit score. Now, where do you post your properties, like your units available for rent? You just post them on Craigslist or Zillow or everywhere? Do you use a service that kind of puts them out all over the place?
No, I use Zillow. And once in a while I use Craig's, but Zillow is so much easier to use than Craig's. All your pictures are already there. You just click, and it's a done deal.
Okay. That's good to know. And then, so you 625 credit score, you post the properties on Zillow. And then when they come to you, where do you get your contracts for, first, actually, where do you run their credit score through? Do you use a service for that, I guess?
Right. I do use a service. And originally to get set up, Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, sorry. I only got a second.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So can we like take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
If that's okay. Can you splice it back?
Okay, so we had a little blip in the interview there, but we were talking about what service you use to run the credit history checks on your tenants or your prospective tenants.
Okay, so I use a company called MCC Group. It's mccgrp.com. And when I originally got set up for it, I had to pay $100. They did an on-site inspection. And, they want to make sure you're a professional, whatever, that gets credit scores. They don't want just some crazy guy looking up people just out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So once you get set up with that, that's the easiest way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get credit scores. But they do it pretty efficiently. And then they also give me a criminal background check. And keep in mind, there's two kinds of criminal background check. One is the national records check, and one is a county level criminal check. So the national record check, that's better than nothing, I guess, but it really isn't much better than nothing because records are out of date. Records don't get updated. Might take 2 years for the charge to actually be on it. And so anybody that relies on national record checks, national criminal record checks, is a fool. The county ones are much more accurate, and I also get open and dismissed charges, right? So an open charge, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to count that like a conviction because you're innocent till proven guilty. But let's say you get an open murder charge. Well, you know what? I'm not going to freaking rent to you.
Yeah.
Period. Let it get cleared, and then I'll rent to it. A dismissed charge, now if it's dismissed with conditions, that means you kind of did it. You pleaded guilty, but you just promised not to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then that worked out for you. But dismissed with conditions, I still count that one. Dismissed totally, I do not count because that's dismissed, right? They didn't have enough evidence to even proceed.
Yeah.
So, and generally, if you get charged of 4 things, they dismiss 3 and you get pled guilty to 1.
Okay. So I guess when you're listing the properties for rent, though, you kind of put all this in the disclaimer, in the description of the property. That way, you're probably not going through tons of people because you say, I would assume, 625 credit score, background check, criminal records check will be completed on tenants, or do you notify them of that ahead of time?
Matter of fact, what I do is on Zillow, every applicant kind of comes through via email.
Uh-huh.
And so then when I get the email that says this person's looking for it, I have a pre-formatted letter that I send to everybody. And if they call me directly, then I answer any questions they have. And I say, text me your email address and I'll send you the same information. So that way everybody gets the same email.
Mm-hmm.
And the email says, the property is central air. There's a dog park. There's so many bedrooms, so many baths. It's got stairs. It doesn't have stairs. And it goes into my criminal criteria, or I should say my tenant selection criteria. And I say, you got to have this, that, or the other. 675 credit score, no criminal background, no evictions. And also one thing I just started putting on there, I'm a disabled vet. So I thought, you know what, if you don't support our military or law enforcement, please look elsewhere for your housing needs. So I put that right on there. And so, I don't want somebody that's going to be out there protesting the cops every week or protesting our military. I mean, to me, that's disrespectful to me and everything. So I think, well, I don't need you. Go rent somebody else.
I agree. 100%.
And I don't know if that helps or hurts, but that's what I put on there.
Yeah. Well, it's your own property. So who cares if it,
right.
if that's what you want, that's what you're going to do. So,
and I also put on there, if you're an illegal alien, and I know they're here, and I used to rent to them, but I can't really do a background check on an illegal alien. How the hell do you do that, right? Because by definition, you can't do it. So I just am not interested in that either because I want solid tenants.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Now, do you take a application fee that kind of covers your cost for all this stuff?
I do. I take $40, and that's generally what they cost. Although if a person has lived in multiple states, the background checks tend to add up faster. So if they're only in Minnesota, I think my check actually cost me $39. So I charge $40. But then if they lived in California, then moved here, well, then we got to go to California and check the counties they lived in California. Or if they came from Illinois or wherever, Iowa or wherever they were. But I just charge a standard $40. You know what I mean? And I've had them as high as 108 that it cost me because they lived in 6 different states before there or whatever the numbers were. So that's, I just eat that cost.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But at least it gives the people, so you're giving them heads up, like, I'm going to run this credit check, going to run this criminal check. And by the way, you're going to pay for it. So I'm sure that weeds out most of the bad people. So I would assume that the prospective tenants you're getting, for the most part, are probably decent people to begin with, because they're being weeded out by that criteria.
Yep, exactly. And
Okay.
people have a tendency to self-screen, and that's why you do it, right? In Minnesota, it's a law. You have to let the tenants know what the criteria is that they'll be rejected on if you charge an application fee.
Okay, that makes sense. So now you have somebody that comes and they're going to end up renting your property. They pass all the background checks and everything. You have a lease agreement. Where do you get your lease agreements from?
I pirated one from Minnesota Multifamily Housing Coalition that had like 35 paragraphs in it, right? 35 sentences or whatever you want to call it. And then since then, I've added some based upon a seminar I went to or something that I thought of or whatever, or a problem that I've had in the past. And so what I've done is now it's my own lease, but I wanted to be at least similar to what a judge would be used to. That's why I started with a template. So basically, I took their template and then added to it, right? Modified it. And, I have things like minimum charges for repairs. That's one thing I've never seen on anybody's leases but mine. So when you move out, charge you $100.
Just for some basic repairs.
Right, because if you go to Ford dealers, right, with your car and you say, I need brakes, and they say, okay, well, that'll be $800. You have the choice of letting them do it or don't let them do it. So I'm letting them know I'm going to charge you $100 to clean the stove if you move out.
Right.
And if I got to change the light bulb, it's $5. The key is $5. And there's about 20 different things listed. If I got to replace a mini blind, it's $25 or 45. I can't remember what all the thing is. My labor charge is $70 an hour. My cleaning charge is $40 an hour. Or I can't exactly remember everything in there, but that's about what stuff is.
Okay, so you're putting in there like the predetermined cost for the turn that they're going to get charged for anyways, because like our rental properties that we have, we take out of their deposit all the cleaning fees or the turning fees, and then give them the remainder if there's a remainder left of their deposit. Right. So you're just saying up front, like, these are the charges of what I'm going to be charging you at the end, a specific amount, instead of just saying, I'm going to take out of your lease the turn charges.
Right. And so this way they have an idea. And once again, if I don't have to replace a mini blind, they don't get charged, right? If I don't have to clean the stove, they don't get charged. But if I do have to do it, these are the charges.
Right. Okay. No problem. Yeah. So now, do you use a software or something to manage all your tenants, or how do you do that?
I'm probably one of the most, I'm a high tech guy, right? Because I was
Hello.
Is pretty minimal.
Oh. Okay. Can you say that again? I think you cut out. You cut out there for a second.
Okay. So yeah, sorry about that. I do see sometimes I get that internet connection is unstable. Sometimes I get that, but so I was an IT guy at the major bank, right? So I'm very technology savvy. Having said that, I don't really use a whole lot of technology, but I do use Microsoft Office, right? I don't use the free whatever. I buy the hard copy and I install it. So I use Excel. I use Microsoft Word. For my accounting, I use Quicken. Right? I don't use QuickBooks. I use Quicken because it's easy. And, QuickBooks is good from a perspective of if you want to be a good accountant, but Quicken is easier for my perspective.
Okay.
And I use the home and business version. I really don't use the rental version. I've had that in the past. So piece of it, I just keep my information in my contact list in Gmail. That way, if I have to access it quick, I can do it from anywhere in the world.
Okay. So Quicken home and office, not necessarily home and, or rental property. I've heard that from other people too, that the home and office is actually better than the rental property one. So
yeah. Well, I think the rental property one is all the home and business, but it gives you the ability to track tenants and maybe track maintenance. I don't know. But every month I send my tenants, I create an invoice for each tenant, each bill. I don't send it to them, but I create it, right? So every month I create 24 invoices, and as they get paid, I check them off, right? You mark it paid, and you got it. And that way I know who hasn't paid and who has paid. And if I want to run a P&L, profit and loss statement, I just click the button, boom, up it comes. So I know how much rents I got by property, and I know what the expenses are by building for the most part, although some things like repairs is one big lump sum. And then I use TurboTax at the end. Like what is it, March 4th today? So I just got done mailing my business taxes in on Monday. I think I mailed them, and then my personal taxes go out here this week. So
Okay.
I use TurboTax for my own.
Yeah. Now, how do you collect the rents? Do they just pay you? They send you a check, or they direct deposit into your bank account, or how's that work?
Good point. So some of the major banks have a software called Zelle, Zelle. So they send it to me electronically. I do PayPal as well. So PayPal, if you do it via the send money to a friend, is free. So there's no charge for that. Some tenants put it in an envelope and mail it, and that's fine. And then some put it in a rent. I got a rent box, and for the most part, when I first started, I used to collect them in person, right? Knock on the door, and they'd hand me the check. And you kind of have to do that with more your lower income. But more and more now, everybody's paying electronic. And I do have a couple tenants that it works better for them to drop it right at the bank. So I set up a bank account for them. They can put the money in. To me, that would drive me mad. But they go in there, they cash their check, and they put it in the bank account right at the same point. And so then they can pay cash for rent, you could say, right? Because they're just putting the cash in, or they transfer it from their account, or however they do it. But I try to make it as easy as possible. If somebody had cash they wanted to pay rent, I would figure out a way to take the cash.
Yeah.
It still gets reported, but because in Minnesota we have to report everything. But everywhere you have to report. But Minnesota, we give everybody a receipt at the end of the year so they can get a tax credit back. So things have to reconcile, right? But cash rent payments, I would take those too.
Okay. Yeah, and I think
landlord.
I think you can do that in other states too. In most states, right? If you request from your landlord that you want, it would almost be like a 1099, I think, is what it would kind of be like, or a receipt of what they paid you. They can write off part of their rent or whatever. So, but most people don't do that, and probably thankfully for a lot of landlords too, because they don't want to end up claiming all that income a lot of times. Whether they should or shouldn't, that's a different story. But oftentimes they don't. So.
In mine, like say, there's a renter's certificate of rent paid. We have to give, by law, we have to give every tenant that. And so if a tenant paid $1,000 a month for 12 months, it shows $12,000. And if, depending upon what their income level is, they can get up to, I think, 17% of that back. So they get, almost a month and a half back.
Okay. And now you mentioned earlier that you have one of your tenants that kind of does repairs. Does he do repairs on all of your buildings and all your properties, or just the one he lives in?
No, it's kind of all of them. And the way I came across him, it was kind of a fluke, right? So my first time when I was coming down here to Florida, I was staying in my fifth wheel, and I really didn't understand. I really didn't know what I was going to do if there was a problem. So I kind of thought, I'm going to go down there and see what happens. And I was going down for 2 months. And prior to that, I had left for 3 weeks, and it seemed to work. So that we're going to go down for 2 months, see what happens. Worst case, I'm going to hop in my truck and come back. I'll leave the fifth wheel down there, and we'll figure it out when I get back. So I left. And all my leases, by the way, renew in the summer. Right, it's from May 1st to like October 1st. And so I was down in Florida, and I wasn't there, I bet, a week. And I don't know why that happens. As soon as you leave, there's always a problem for whatever reason, right? It can't happen the day before. It's going to happen the day. Tenant calls me up and say, my girlfriend and I are breaking up. I can't afford it anymore. I got to leave. And I actually appreciate those calls rather than say, oh, my rent will be late this month. But trust me, right? He actually told me up front that he's going to leave and he can't afford it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I got to think about it. Let me call you back tomorrow. So I called him back the next day, and I said, look, your daytime job was an apartment maintenance guy. That's all you do all day is fix stuff in apartments, right? That's what he works for, a property management company. He's the maintenance guy. So what better guy to have than that? So I said, what were you going to pay if your girlfriend? He goes, well, I was going to pay $800 a month compared to $800 a month. He was going to pay compared to like $1,300, right, or $1,200, I guess at that point. So I said, well, you just keep paying the $800, and I will let you stay there, and I will send you out on some different jobs. And so that's been like that ever since. And he can fix furnaces, like he's done like replace the flame sensors and or clean the flame sensors, replace the igniters, replace the dishwasher. So he's done a lot of stuff, right, besides little things.
Yeah. So do you pay him like besides giving him that discount, do you pay him for the job's additional income also?
Not at this point. I've just, because I figured I'm probably giving him $400 or $500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure at $20 an hour, that's 25 hours, 20 to 25 hours. He cleans the buildings. That might take 5 hours a month. And there really isn't that much work. You'd be surprised on 24 units, there really isn't that much work to do on them.
No,
I
yeah.
do as much, as I can between every apartment turn. Like anything that's loose, I tighten. Anything that's half broke, I fix or replace. I do a lot of time change items, like just toilet flappers or toilet fill valves, which is probably the biggest thing. I take out all my garbage disposals, so we don't have garbage disposals in them. I line under the sink with vinyl, so that if you do have a leak, it doesn't ruin the cabinet. I test all the sinks for leaks, fill them with water and drain them, make sure no drips come out of any of the drain lines. So I do a lot of stuff between each tenant.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's good. That's a good idea to line it with vinyl. I was just thinking too, maybe you could paint it with that. What is that stuff? There's all those commercials where they put it on the bottom of the boats.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Flex Seal. You could paint
Yeah.
your inside of your cabinet with Flex Seal, maybe. That's a good idea.
That might work, but it's super thin.
Okay.
But I can buy this vinyl, and I buy a 3-foot piece of it, 3
Mhm.
feet by 12 feet, right? And then every 2 feet you can make a piece of vinyl.
Mhm.
So you got 6 of them, 6 vanities or 6 kitchen sinks, and it's a done deal.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well, cool. And then do you do like the landscaping, or is there even landscaping on these properties that you have?
So
Like
my
snow
duplex that I
removal?
have there, I need to have somebody mow it. So I hire a commercial mower. Never have a tenant, unless it's a single family house, maybe you could do it. But anytime you have a tenant do it, there's always going to be a problem with, the lawnmower wasn't working, couldn't get it started, didn't have gas, didn't have da-da-da-da-da, right? And you name it. I can hire a lawn service for $100 a month, come in there and guaranteed it's going to be done every week, all the time.
Yes, I agree. And then snow removal too, since you're in Minnesota, you hire that out?
I do. I have a snow removal company that comes in. Tenants still have snow shovels. If they want to get out there and shovel the sidewalk, I don't shovel the sidewalks. I just do the driveways.
Okay.
So they
No,
can come in there.
yeah, that all
Good.
makes sense. And so like you just have all these systems in place because you've done it for so long. And like we mentioned earlier, it just takes time to like learn and be patient. And as you learn, just make sure to take note of things that have gone wrong, and then you can change that for the next one. And then over time, like you've got a system in place, it all kind of runs smoothly, and you're able to self-manage these properties even from afar with the help of your maintenance guy and stuff. And it all ends up working out just fine for you.
So far it has. It really has. And I count my blessings, and most of my properties are paid off, so I don't really have a lot of bills. I mean, I got a lot of bills on it, but not like high bills, right? The biggest expense I got is my property taxes, comes twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
But so I generate a ton of money on profits, or on these rentals.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to be highly leveraged and take all the money out of the property and buy another property. Well, if I leveraged my properties and bought more, I would have more properties, but probably less money because I'm paying more in interest.
Right.
Right. So if my property payment was $1,500 and I pay off the mortgage, a lot of people buy a property and they don't have $1,500 a month worth of cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So I still get the same amount of tenants, but just higher cash flow when I pay them off.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it definitely just depends on where you at in your life. You're retired now, or you're enjoying, not working full time at your IT job. So, for you to go out and maybe leverage the properties and then take more time to end up paying those properties off, maybe is not your plan. But for somebody that maybe is 30 years old and they are working full time, and like you were when you were trying to build your portfolio, maybe for them, they want to leverage it a little bit more and then buy more properties. And so by the time they're 60 or whatever, they can have even more units paid off. But everything comes down to what your own philosophy is and what your own plan is, right? I assume.
And that's exactly right. At one point I did have almost $1 million for the mortgages, right? So there was a time where I thought, holy crap, $1 million. How the hell can you ever pay that back?
Yeah.
Now I owe about a little over 300, right? So a lot of it has been paid off. But you're right. When you're younger, maybe more risk, you want to take more risks, because I believe I could have been a billionaire if I would have really leveraged and really went, and maybe did it full time earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I got plenty to live on. I make more than most people do, working or not. And, I live a pretty good lifestyle, and I don't live extravagant lifestyle, right? I mean, I buy stuff if I want it. I buy good stuff, but I don't buy stuff just because.
Right.
Although I'm going to buy a horse, so I don't know. Maybe that's different, but that's it's a whole nother
That's
deal.
okay. You still got to buy stuff that you enjoy, so that's okay.
Yeah.
The feed and all the expenses that you get into with the horses, though, is what I
Right.
have a lot of
Exactly.
friends that buy horses or buy things for their kids or for themselves, even their wives or whatever, whoever, and then all of a sudden they're like, man, the feed and the vet bills and all this and that, and it starts adding up, and then your truck, and then you got a trailer, and then or you hire somebody to come move it if you need to move it, whatever. But it's just like anything. If you enjoy it, who cares what the money
Yeah.
costs?
And that's kind of it, right? With because I already got an RV. So what can cost more? And I had a boat in the past, but what can cost more than an RV or a boat? And probably a horse.
That's
So let's get one of those.
yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Well, the next kind of last section of the questions that I have is what's your favorite resource for learning about real estate? Seminars, books, podcasts. What's your kind of one go-to that is better than the rest for yourself?
They all have their piece, right? I like a lot of like forums because you get real time, not really real time, but you get real information from real people.
Yeah.
But having said that, I've been through a lot of seminars, and mostly seminars, they're trying to sell you something at the end of them, right? But don't worry about it. Go there and you figure out what you can learn during that hour or 2 hours or 3 days that you can. And that's what you need to do, right? And whether you go on from that or not, I probably don't think it's really necessary, but you gather some information, then go to a forum and look at all the different topics, and then whatever, just keep, I don't really read books per se, but there probably is some books out there that probably have good information. But that's probably I probably are forums and, Bigger Pockets, the forums there are tremendous.
Oh yeah, they're excellent.
you know,
Yeah. Okay, cool. What about a piece of technology or software that you use in your business or personal life that just makes everything so much easier?
As I mentioned before, Quicken, I do a lot. In TurboTax, I do a lot. In Microsoft Office Suite, right? Having said that, on my phone, I do have Quicken on my phone too, although I don't really use it too much. But a good smartphone, man. You can't. I mean, I text all my tenants like between the 25th and 28th of the month to let them know rent is due soon, and if they already paid, thank you very much. I let them know it's a group text, so if they reply, they know it's going to a group.
Yeah.
I mean, that's invaluable too, right? Being able to text or email your tenants is huge in my book. Plus your phone, you can take pictures of stuff. You got to get a model number off a dishwasher, off a stove, or off of whatever. You can take a picture of it, so you got the model. I mean, who the hell writes anything down now?
I know. Yeah. Cell phones have come so far, and it's like a lot of times, you think, oh man, a new iPhone 11, whatever, it's going to cost $1,000, which is expensive. And you don't always need to get the newest phone. But at the same time, how much easier does that phone make your life? Like how many hours of savings in other aspects of your life do you get from having that phone readily available, like you're saying? So,
Right.
$1,000, yeah, or whatever, it's expensive, but man, it saves you some time.
Yep. And I got $1,000 phone too, although it was a 2-for-1 deal, right? So you buy one, get one free kind of thing. So
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, it's got more memory on it, right? So I can put more phone apps on it. So there's certain things like Cam Scanner, right? If I got to scan a document and email it to somebody as a PDF, I can take a picture of whatever and take a picture of a lease, upload it to my computer. I got a good PDF editor too, by the way. I use Nitro Pro as a PDF editor instead of Adobe. I can electronically sign. I can set up new leases, which I'm doing as we speak. For renewals, I can email it to the tenants. They can print it and sign it, or they can sign it electronically and email it back. So I try to do like lease renewals too with automated and via online. So I get all the lease renewals done when I'm here in Florida. And I know that right now I got to turn it for March 1st, a building that I'm going to be selling. So I'm not going to worry about filling it. And then, we'll find out for June 1st here pretty soon, but I should be able to show apartments from a distance as well. I might have to have somebody there to do it, but I should be able to market and show apartments from a distance as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, there's lots of good information here, Eric. I really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you? I know you have a blog and things like that. So what is that called and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the blog is nononsenselandlord.com. So nononsenselandlord, one word.com. I don't always update it too much, but feel free to contact me through there. And I always respond to my emails. So they can certainly do that.
Right on. Okay. Well, Eric, thanks. There's lots of good information there. It's a inspiring story, and you've obviously made a good career choice by buying all these properties and living the life down there in Florida and not freezing to death up there in Minnesota. So that's a good thing. And yeah, like I said, appreciate you being here, and you have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too. And come down and visit if you want.
All right, I will. Thanks, Eric.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.